Okay, we're going to talk about the male reproductive system. First of all, I want to go through all of the parts of the male sex organs. I will just kind of point out some things on the diagram first, just to kind of get our bearings. Of course, this is a side view. This is the intestines entering into here. So we have, of course, the rectum, and that would be coming off of the colon. This right here is just the pubis bone, so that's the bone that is protecting the parts that are inside. This is the urinary bladder, and then the rest of of course, this is the anus over here. So we're going to go through the path of a sperm cell as it goes, it is created, and then as it goes towards the outside of the body through the parts. Okay, so the sac that holds all of these parts, of course, is called the scrotum. This is the area where the sperm is produced, and in the female, this is inside, and in the male, of course, this is outside the body. And the testes are the area where the sperm are produced. It's made of many tubules. I'll show you a picture of that later, but a whole lot of footage there in terms of the tubules. And then the sperm would travel to this area called the epididymis. In the epididymis, they differentiate, that is, they change a little bit and get their tails. And then they will go up this tube, which of course there's two of these because there's two testes and two epididymi. And then this tube here is called the vas deferens. So there's two of those. And those are leading up to a point right here in the prostate gland where it meets up with the ureter, which is coming from the urinary bladder. So there's three ducts that are entering right into there. And then it will go out of the end of the penis, like through the urethra. All right. So there's some glands that are along the way. There's a big gland. It looks kind of like a feather. It's called the seminal vesicle. It's going to add fluids to the sperm. And then there's another gland that's a little bit further down called the bulbourethral gland. And this is just also adding fluids and lubrication to the sperm. The sperm themselves have to be coated in kind of a sugary, carbohydrate-rich coating, and some mucus and stuff like that, just to kind of nourish it and keep it damp as it exits the body. And of course, we have internal fertilization, so it's going to exit the male body and directly into the female. They don't live outside the body too long, a little bit of time, but not very long. If they get dried out at all, they're goners. Okay, so that's kind of a one view. Also, I wanted to point out here, because there's three ducts entering right there, this is one of the reasons why prostate cancer is so hard to deal with, because if the tumor is anywhere near to any of those ducts, it makes it really hard to get out without kind of ruining everything else. Okay, so let's look at a front view. This is just showing you how there are two vas deferens that are going back. So if you had a vasectomy, what they would do is they would go in the very back part of the scrotum, and these are very close together, closer together than they actually look right here, and that would make it so they do a small incision and they can cut easily and cut those tubes. And that would allow for sperm production still, and that means that you don't have any kind of hormonal upset from the vasectomy, but it also makes it so sperm cannot travel down these ducts and meet up in the prostate gland with the ureter. What would happen then is the sperm production, you'd make a lot of sperm, and then they would get reabsorbed by the body, as they do if you don't use them. All right, so let's go over the hormonal control. First of all, to understand it, you have to know some of the internal parts of the testes. So let's just kind of look at this. So this is one testes, and it's showing you the many tubules that exist on the inside of the testes. And they are going to, of course, have cells that are going to enter into the lumen of the testes and then to the epididymis and then out. These cells, called the Sertoli cells, These guys are the ones that are going to undergo be a spermatogonium and undergo spermatogenesis, which is doing meiosis. And this, of course, is the beginning part of meiosis. And the first division creates the secondary spermatocytes. The second division creates the spermatotids. And they will become sperm cells by developing or differentiating and getting their flagella. All right. So the Sertoli cells are basically the cells that are doing that. There's other cells that are in the interstitial areas between the seminiferal tubules called the Leydig cells, and they're going to be part of this hormonal action. All right, so let's look at this. This is in your textbook if you can get it in front of you so that my moving around doesn't bug you. All right, so first of all, there is the hypothalamus in the brain is going to produce the hormone that is called a gonadotropin releasing hormone, or a GnRH. And that's going to go to the pituitary gland, the anterior pituitary, and that's going to be producing a couple of hormones that are both are important, both in males and females. By the way, all three of these hormones are used in females and males. So later on, when we talk about the female, you'll see why they have their names that they have. This is called follicle stimulating hormone, and this is called luteinizing hormone. All right, so what's going to happen is in the anterior pituitary gland, the follicle stimulating hormone is going to go to the Sertoli cells, and that is going to help with the beginning of spermatogenesis. But it also needs testosterone from the Leydig cells. So what happens is the luteinizing hormone is going to the Leydig cells, and those are going to be starting to produce testosterone, and under the influence of both FSH and testosterone, the spermatogenesis will occur. So you need both of those hormones for that to happen. Testosterone is also responsible for primary and secondary sex characteristics in the male. The primary ones, of course, are just being an outie instead of an innie, but the secondary ones are things like a deep voice, more sweat glands, bigger muscle mass, etc. All right, so the Leydig cells, when they start producing a lot of testosterone, that is going to dump over into the bloodstream, and that will then end up going back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary and turning off this process. So that's a negative feedback. So basically it's going to interfere or just indicate to the hypothalamus to stop producing the GnRH, and then that will stop the production of FSH and LH, which are making the spermatogenesis occur. All right.